These are 4 black and white sketches from my sketchbook. They're from page number 70. For materials, we're going to use high-tech pens, brush pen, white Dr. Martens ink, brush number 0, markers, straight edge, triangle, and that's basically it. We're going to start with environment number 1 or 4. It's going to be a canyon post. We're going to start with gray tone, as you can see, and then we're going to use a high-tech pen number 0.25 for line work. I started with a gray tone number 10 of gray value markers to get an idea of what I basically want to do with the composition. And once I get that tone down, I start creating lines like the buildings, the spherical, circular building. I also use the straight edge, in this case triangle, to help me with the geometric forms, especially straight edge, verticals and horizontal lines. I want to make sure that they are very straight and specific to convey the message that this is an environment of and a building that is very, very geometrical in form. And to keep the drawing small, that way you can control the composition by when you look at and when you're drawing and sketching, you have full control of the peripheral vision, and while you draw, you'll be looking at the whole drawing at once. That way you control proportions better. Also, keep your line work at the minimum with a 0.25, the smallest one that you can get. It is very important to do, not to get into detail, just the basics. What you can see here is I'm drawing basically the outline and no details in particular, just the composition. It is very important to visualize 2 or 3 steps ahead of what you're going to draw. That way you continue the line flow, and also just before you start your drawing, visualize the whole sketch. You can do changes and variations of what you have visually created in your mind, but on the overall, you have a very good understanding of how this sketch is gonna end up like, because you already have a very good 90% of the idea in your mind. Now that we have the line already drawn, we're going to start with a very light value marker, maybe a 10 to 20% gradation marker for tone, and we will build up the tone by starting with this particular one, and then we go darker as we need it. And now we go to a 30% gray value marker and start building up the contrast on the shadow side, even though this is not the actual shadow value. We don't want to we have to build up the tone as we go. It's better and it's easier to control the tone by building it up instead of going directly to a high contrast value between tones. Now we grab a value number 30% value tone marker, and we start building up the midtones, uh, but gradually. Now we're going to use a high-tech pen, 0.4 line thickness, and we start detailing, doing the details of the rock and the buildings, doing shadow lines, axle lines, contour lines. Start to start developing the sketch in a more dimensional way. Now we're going to add a little fine detail of black accents here and there uh, with the fine tip black marker, just to create some shadows and little accents on the sketch. Now we grab an 80% value tone marker. Never any darker. We don't want to go any darker than 80% for our darkest shadow, because the black that we're gonna use for the darker shadow is the actual tip or the actual line work. This is very important. Now we're gonna start developing the dark shadows, and we'll take it from there and start defining the tone, the darkest tone of the sketch. Okay, now we're gonna do highlights with white wash paint, or in this case, that I prefer is what I prefer is Dr. Martin's bleed proof white. is very is what it can be watered down, so you can control the opacity. And once it dries, it becomes bleed proof. So I love it. It's a very good wash to work with. I use it for strictly for highlights. Um, don't draw with the brush with the white. It should be strictly used for this technique, just to do highlights and accents, little accents and details. Um, just just basically that, just highlights and details. Okay, keep your sketches small as possible. This particular one is 3.5 inches wide by 5. So as you can see, the environments that I draw are very small, and the reason is that you want to keep control of your visual periphery. That way you control your shapes, your composition, your proportions, everything, because you're looking at everything at once, and it's easier that way, even for perspective. When you finish sketches like this, you can scan them and take them to Photoshop and tweak sizes and proportions of buildings and both foreground and background. You can manipulate the saturation. You can also do duotones, or start putting filters and color to the illustration, and keeping it more in between digital and traditional media, to make it to look more fresh and more of a signature style than a digital Photoshop style. I think that makes a difference, and that's where I'm going to separate the digital look from a mix of traditional media and Photoshop. I think is very important. This is sketch number 1 of 4 of them, from page number 70 of my sketchbook. I hope you enjoy it. I'll find the other 3 also very interesting, and they're coming up right after this one. I'm glad, and I hope you enjoy them. Thank you.